How's it going, race fans? We're here talking about the 2011 Florida Derby. Kicks off at Gulfstream this Sunday. This race easily shapes up as one of the premier three-year-old events in North America. There's a veritable who's who of like all the top contenders that have been running in Florida this year, and this is one of the key Derby preps. A lot of horses coming into this one who win it go into the Derby with a lot of momentum, and like last year, Icebox won the Florida Derby and then came this close to winning the Derby itself after having to like check 3 times down the stretch. It's really interesting, and the field looks a little bit lopsided. I think there's probably 2 or 3 contenders here where the connections have just sort of taken a roll of the dice, maybe looking for sort of a backdoor into the Derby with a couple place finishes, maybe a show or something like that. A lot of money to be won, and the winner, you know, basically gets to walk into the Derby, and you can probably expect the second place one, no matter his earnings, to wind up there as well. We're going to be jumping into the field here, looking at some of the top contenders and trying to get a pretty good idea of how things are expected to shape up. We've got Soldat coming out of the 1 stall, and he's also the 9-5 favorite. Soldat's right where he wants to be, you know, from an arbitrary perspective. But the thing is there's a lot of pace in this race, and the really hot pace, and the pace that could be hotter than the one that Soldat wants to set, is on the 8 stall, on the outside, with Flashpoint. Flashpoint is probably going to break really well and try to get right on that lead. Flashpoint's pedigree is full of sprinting, and he's only really done 7 panels before, so he's getting a 2 furlong stretch out here, and a lot of people expect him to bounce pretty hard. The issue with that, though, and especially the issue for Soldat, is that he's probably going to try to wire the field as well, and if those two get caught up in a very early pace duel, both of them could wind up finishing off the board. I think that most of the time you would say that, well, even if it does get a little bit hot, Soldat's a great horse, he can probably get in there and stick it out. The issue is that in this one we have Dialed In, and if we get a really, really strong early pace, Dialed In is going to come roaring down the stretch, and it could set up really nicely for him too. I like Soldat. I think that his works have gotten a lot better. He looks very sharp in Florida. He loves Gulfstream. And, you know, he's never finished outside the top 2 in his entire career. Very versatile horse. He's run in several different types of races. And at 9-5, I think he's great. He's going to be a good horse, but I'm going to try to beat him this time. And I'm going to try to beat him with To Honor and Serve. To Honor and Serve comes out of the 2 stall, right next door, and this is a real make-or-break race for him. I think that earnings-wise, he's already in the mix for the Derby, but the last race that he had was quite controversial, actually, because a lot of people expected him. He was coming in for his 3-year-old debut. A lot of people expected him to just walk this one, but he really didn't fire. And what emerged after the race was that he wasn't really supposed to win, necessarily. I think the connections just had him out to see how he'd do. And the other important thing to look at about this horse, too, is if you go back to his 2-year-old campaign, he didn't do so well in his debut and then stormed out on his second race. I think there was something like a 15 to 20 point Beyer improvement there. And we could look for something very similar here. He's a very, very sharp series of works at Payson Park, and he also gets a 4-to-1 price. This horse has never, ever gone off at anything even close to a 4-to-1 price, and I think a faster, earlier pace helps him. You could see that they were trying to deploy a bit of a stalking trip the last time, and I think he's going to try to do the same thing here. With Soldat probably jumping right out early, setting a pretty hot early pace with Flashpoint, I think that maybe we could see To Honor and Serve to sort of tuck in on the rail, save ground, and get the type of race that he wants. I think that he's definitely the one to watch here, and you know, there's no question that last year he was the 2nd best 2-year-old in the country after those pair of Grade 2 wins when he took the National on the Remsen. This is the race that Connections have likely had their eye on, and this is the one that they want to win to make a very bold declaration ahead of the Derby. If he wins this race and he wins it well, his Derby price right now will drop like a stone. Next up, we've got Dialed In. Dialed In's at 2-to-1, which some people might think is a little short, especially after the last race that he had, where it was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people. He faced off against older colts and geldings, which was sort of a surprise move for some, in allowance company. He wound up getting beat by his stablemate Equestria, and a lot of people were sort of wondering what Nick Zito was doing. And the thing is that Dialed In has already really sort of proven his credentials with the previous stakes win that he got. And again, I think that this one sets up quite nicely for him with all that early speed in the race. I think that they sort of learned a lesson last time, and he also has a very, very sharp series of morning works. I think he's fired a bullet 4 out of the past 5 times against fairly solid fields. I believe he's working at Palmettos. He looks sharp, and I think that he's a very, very logical addition to any of your your forecast or your triactor tickets, because he's going to be closing late. And I'm not sure if he gets there or not. I think that To Honor and Serve could probably beat him, can probably hold him off. unless he runs a real blinder. At 2-1, it looks like some people know how to win a blinder. Also worth noting, Zito won the race last year with Icebox and comes back here with Dialed In. We've got Flashpoint at 6-1. Now this guy's a pure sprinter. He's a Pomeroy, and there's also a pure sprint pedigree on the dam side. I think that raises a few question marks, but he won going away so well in his last race. It was over 7 furlongs. I think he won by, like, was it 10 lengths or something? So I don't really think he should have too much trouble with the extra panels, but my issue is that he might come out. This is only his 3rd race, I believe, and he might come out and maybe look a little rank on the lead. A lot of people are expecting a bounce here, and at 6-1, it looks like some people think he really has a chance. A really nice triple-digit buyer the last time out. If he can take that and improve on that, he could wind up being a real story here. But personally, I think he's involved a little bit more to take Soldat out of the race than to actually come out and win this one. Connections opted to stay away from the swale, which is where a lot of people thought he was going to go. So it's sort of an interesting crapshoot that he's heading to the Florida Derby. You never know, it could happen, but I'm going to keep him out of my top 3. Next one up is Stay Thirsty. Stay Thirsty is a bit of a bridesmaid horse, I guess. He's a stablemate to Uncle Mo. Uncle Mo's the most famous 3-year-old in America right now, and he's also done really well. I mean, he took the Gotham on his 3-year-old debut. Not the greatest race, but it's still a stakes win, right? He's at 8-1. 8-1 shows that a lot of people don't really think he has the chops to deal with the upper level contenders here, but I think that he, with a good stalking trip, he could definitely get up for a piece of this one. It's important to note the gear change. He goes blinkers on for this one. That's the only gear change in the race. But what really takes him out of this is all of his buyers are in the 80s. He really needs to step it up by he'll need probably a triple-digit buyer easily to win this race, and probably a good triple-digit buyer, maybe a 105. Off of, where is he right now, 89? That's a massive improvement against a massive field. So you sort of wonder about his credentials, but he's a great horse, and he deserves respect. Great connections all around. So, he deserves to be here. I'm just not sure whether he's a logical win candidate. The way that I think this one shapes up, I think To Honor and Serve can catch Soldat. Soldat will hopefully try to fade out, well, not try, but he'll fade out a little bit on the stretch after getting involved in a tough early pace. If To Honor and Serve gets that nice sort of stalking trip just in the back along the rail, I'm confident in his ability to hold off Dialed In. If Dialed In sort of gets a clean shot at this one, it's going to be pretty interesting, but personally I think To Honor and Serve comes out here and proves what he's got. So good luck in the 2011 Florida Derby. It should be a great race.